let's move on. So we're going to talk about some basic GIS analysis now, and it's really basic, so bear with me. But hopefully it'll give you an idea about how things are usually done using ArcGIS, and will let you, find more stuff as you go along. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is called buffer. It's a buffer tool which is really useful, especially for those of you who do spatial stuff and you're interested in doing spatial stuff. There's a good tool to know. We'll also do one called select by location, which is also useful for spatial stuff. And depending on time, we'll try and see how we can compute areas of polygons or the perimeter of a polygon, for instance, if you wish to use any of these. So the first thing is a buffer tool. So what I want you to use on the buffer tool is I want you to start ArcGIS again from the beginning, right? So whichever ArcGIS window you have right now, please close it. When it asks you to save, please say no. And I want you to start ArcMap afresh. And when it pops up a box asking you to choose something, just click cancel such that you're back at this window, right? So I want you to right click on the data frame. So remember, the data frame is this thing. I want you to right click on the data frame and choose data frame properties, right? Then I want you to go to the general tab, and under units, I want you to change the map units and the display units to miles. And then click OK. Right. Then I want you to click on Add Data. Add Data is that plus icon on the top. And I want you to choose this shapefile again, which is the US 2010 Census by State shapefile. I want you to click the Add Data button again and choose the US airports. So essentially what you have should be something like this. You click this, choose US 2010, you should get something like that. And you click again and you choose US airports and you should get something like that. Are we all here? All right. Then what I need you to do is I want you to, before we actually do the buffer, I want you to see two things. One is I want you to right click on the US 2010 by state layer over here and choose properties and click on the source tab. So I want you to see that this is where you can see the coordinate system that this particular feature uses. Okay? You can do that. You can do something similar for the airports also. So if you go to properties and you go to source, you will see that this is where the same thing is stored. So one point to note, that if you want two layers like this to overlay on top of one another nicely like this, you want to keep them in the same coordinate system. Because half the problem about when you have two different maps to use, and half the problem is actually getting them on a same map like this. And one good thing for you to actually do is to make sure that they have the same coordinate system. So let's say they do have different coordinate systems, or let's say one map comes with no coordinate system whatsoever, or no projection. What do? So there is a tool, and this is by far your best friend when you use ArcGIS. So if you go click on Geoprocessing and click Arc Toolbox, so remember we opened this earlier and we have Arc Toolbox like this. I want you to click under Data Management, under Projections and Rasters, and under Feature. So I want you to see two tools. One is called Define Projection Tool, which is right here at the bottom. So, which is that right there. And there is another called Project. You will use the Define Projection tool when your map comes with no projection whatsoever. So you define it from scratch. You use the Project tool if you want to change projection from one to another. And once you get both along, or two layers with the same projection, and you put them on ArcMap like this, they should align up nicely like this, right? All right. So now I want you to think about the buffer. So I want you to click on geoprocessing again and click buffer. So this is the buffer tool that will open from here. I want you to choose the input feature. Oh, sorry, there is actually one more layer for you to add. So if you can cancel and come out. So if you go click add data again, I want you to choose the JFK shapefile that you have. So there will be 3 layers for you. One is US census by state, one is US airport, and one is just JFK, which is this round green thing, which is right there, right? Now I want you to click on geoprocessing and start the buffer tool right here. Under input features, I want you to choose the JFK layer that you chose. Then I want you to leave the output which is created as its default. I want you to make the distance to be a linear unit with a radius of 100 miles. So in this tool right here, I want you to put in 100, and I want you to change this decimal degrees things to miles. Okay? Then I want you to click OK. And what you should see is a buffered layer. So once you click OK, ArcGIS takes some time to process your request. So just wait. And if you look here right at the bottom, it's going to tell you that it is buffering. So that it should do that for you after a few seconds. And once it's done, you'll see a message that pops up at the bottom right telling you that the buffer is done. Do you guys see that? Okay. So essentially what it's created for you over here is a layer which is called JFK underscore, I think you guys will see buffer 1 perhaps, instead of buffer 2. So essentially what you see is a buffer. So what is this buffer? What is this layer actually? So if you right click on this layer and choose zoom to layer, right? Right click on this layer, on this new layer that's been created, click zoom to layer, see what happens. What it's done is that it's used the center as the JFK airport, and it's taken a buffer of 100 miles around JFK and put a circle, right? Now, if you go to the US airports website, airports layer right here, which is the second one on your table of contents, right click, go to properties, a window will open. I want you to go to labels. I want you to choose label features in this layer. Make sure that the field over here is AIRPT underscore name. And I want you to click OK. What happens is it will immediately put the labels for all the different airports. So if you wanted to know what are the airports within a 100-mile radius of John F. Kennedy, this map will clearly tell you what that is. Right? Any question? Why does Newark? I have no idea. No idea. So the next thing I want you to do is, but you see, this will let you, visualize things on a map nicely. But that's fine. But one thing, what you do want to do is to try to see whether you can get this data out, right? So what you want to do when you do spatial stuff is you don't just want to identify the neighbors. You want to be able to take that data out and use it with your analysis. So how do you do that? So I want you to get out of ArcGIS again. Sorry to make you do this a bunch of times. Sorry?
So when I prepare my slides for talk, I want my circles to look like circles and not ellipses.
Yes. But right now it looks like an ellipse.
Yeah.
That's the screen resolution on your Dell.
I understand that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Maybe it's probably because of the distance. Maybe because of the projection. It shows you an ellipse. So in order for you to find out, get more, I want you to use another tool. So get out of ArcMap, get in again.
not save anything?
Sorry? We're not saving anything, no. And I want you to right click on the data frame again, choose data frame properties, navigate to the general tab, and change the thing to miles, which is what we did earlier. So I want you to right click, go to data frame properties, under general, I want you to change to miles, change display to miles, both to miles, right? And click OK. Then I want you to click add data, add your US census data again, add your US airports again, and add the JFK thing again, right? Once you've done that, now we move to the main thing about this tool. Well, technically it's not a tool, but it's part of GIS analysis nevertheless. So we chose buffer from the geoprocessing menu. I want you to go under selection and choose select by location, right? So I want you to go under the selection menu and choose select by location, okay? Which should give you this particular window. So under the target layer, which is here, I want you to choose US airports. Under the source layer, I want you to choose JFK. It should already be there. If not, just make sure you choose it. And I want you to apply a search distance over here of 200 miles. Let's leave it as 200 miles, whatever it is, right? So remember again, your target layer is US airports, your source layer is JFK, and you're applying a search distance of 200 miles. Click OK. See what it does. Essentially what it's done is that it's selected all airports within a 200-mile radius of JFK. So if you take your zoom icon and you zoom in, you'll see exactly that. Okay? Give me 1 second. So, but what is the point of just selecting all these different airports, right? What you want is to be able to get this data out. So you want to know not just, which villages, for me to show you on a map, which villages are surrounding a earthquake epicenter. You want to be actually see information on these villages surrounding this epicenter within whatever radius. How do you do that? You basically right click on the US airports layer, go to open attribute table, and if you see this list, you will see that some features are highlighted in blue and others are not. The ones highlighted in blue are the ones that are selected. Okay? So in your map, whatever was highlighted like this in light blue in the northeast, those are exactly the same ones which are highlighted here. And if you click here on the top left of your attribute table, you click here and click export, another window will open, and see over here you can choose to export all your selected records. So essentially you can suck out all information of those airports within a 200-mile radius of JFK and take it out as a text file, get it into ROS data, do whatever you want to do with it. Simple stuff, you can do it in 2 minutes. Yes? Yes.
So if I would have chosen the wrong projection for the map, it might give me the wrong results for the map. Right?
Exactly. So one of the key things in all this is because we are using distance, so we are using miles. So we have to make sure that the projection that we use actually preserves distance. In a case like this, it may not matter that much because you rarely have airports very close to each other or that close to each other. But in other cases, like villages surrounding an earthquake epicenter, it might really matter. Yes?
And can I ask ArcGIS to give me an additional column in that data frame where it would indicate how far the airport is from JFK, for instance?
Not using this. So under your toolbox, your Arc tools, I don't know under where exactly. So I think it's under the spatial. So there's, if you go to geoprocessing and click toolbox, you'll see that there are two categories here. One is called spatial analyst tools and one is called spatial statistics tools. These two tools will let you do a whole bunch of stuff. If you click under spatial analyst tools, there is one called distance, and it will let you calculate all kinds of distances between any two things that you want. So you can basically calculate the distance that you want and then do the selection that I did and then take out what you want, right? So the idea would be that you will calculate the distance between JFK and every other airport in the country, then select airports within a 200-mile radius, then take out the data, and you'll get the distance for that data also, right? So that is that. Any other questions?
Instead of selecting those who are at X miles, can you get a new column saying X miles? Or
Yeah, so once you have to calculate the distance first before doing the selection. Then you'll get that new column. Okay? Any other questions? All right. So one thing I want you to do is, again, I'm sorry to do this, but I need you to close ArcMap again. And now we move to the topic of thematic maps, which is probably, one of the strengths of ArcGIS, other than a whole host of other things, if I may add. So thematic maps essentially are the typical kind of maps that you will probably put in your paper or in your presentation. What are thematic maps? They are basically maps based on attributes. That means to say, if you have a map of the United States and you have the population of each state, and you want to depict a map which shows you how population changes geographically, that is a thematic map. What is the attribute you're using in that case? You're using population, right? So what does a map typically contain? And this is something that's very important. Your map needs to have a title, always. And obviously the map itself. It needs to have a legend, right? Things that we almost always forget. It needs to have a scale. I need to know what the size is. It needs to have a north arrow. And the next, I think, is the most important. It needs to have name, organization, data source, date, projection, and any kinds of disclosure that you want. So a complete map should have all these pieces of information. The last one, which is name, organization, data source, blah, 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 I leave it out for now. When we do our demo, we'll do a demo on all the others about how this is done, right? Any questions? Okay. So, and lastly, always when you use a map, please use a template. Especially if you're like me, where you create multiple maps of the same part of the world over and over again. In a paper, you want the scale, you want the zooming in, you want the placement of the north arrow and the legend and everything to be consistent. And what is the best way to make sure that they're consistent? Use a template. And I'll show you how to create a very simple template and reuse it as you go, right? All right. So what I want you to do is to start ArcMap again. So hit cancel such that you're back at this window. I want you to click on add data. And this time I want you to pick this thing which is called PE 2008 by county. What is this? This is basically a map of US counties which has information from the presidential election of 2008. Right? So what you should see is a map like this. Hopefully. But possibly with some color for you guys. Right? If you right click on this particular layer and you choose open attribute table, what you should see is, as you go here, every row here is every county. So you will find things like area, perimeter, name of the county, the state in which the county is located. You will also get information on the number of votes won by the Democratic Party, Republican Party, others, percentage of Democratic, Republican, others, and there is something called a COD symbol. I have no idea what this is, but this is something that Atlas folks use apparently. And I've created this one last column right here, which is PER_DEM, which is the percentage of percentage of Democratic vote in that county, right? And that's what we're going to use. Yes?
How did you create it?
I can show you. So, for instance, I won't create it now, but I'll show you the process of creating it. So you see there already exists a field here which is called %_DE, right? I have created a variable called PER_DEM. And if you look at the values, they're exactly the same. So the question is, why didn't I use this and why did I have to create this? The reason for creating this is very simple, and I'll show you why I did it. So I want you to click over here at the top left and choose Add Field. Once you add a field, it'll ask you for a name and it'll ask you for a type. And once you click OK, you can then, it'll create an empty field for you. This is like using a gen command in Stata, right? It creates an empty thing for you. And then you can essentially create a bunch of stuff. So the reason why I created this PER_DEM is because I needed something that was a number. This older variable, which came with the map, which is %_DE, is a string. And strings are not useful to me. What I need them are as numbers. So if I create this thing called test for you and I create as a float, so I'll end up having that, right? If you select that new field, right click on the field, on the header, and choose Field Calculator. Essentially what it comes up with is a dialog box which lets you choose how you want to compute this field based on whatever functions, fields, numbers that you want to do. So what did I do? I just basically went here, chose %DE, came here, I clicked OK, and that was it.
And you can switch between Visual Basic and Python.
Yes, so everything that I've shown you, and I was going to mention this at the end, but everything that I've shown you using point and click in ArcGIS can be scripted using Python. Each and everything. So if you're comfortable with Python, I would have shown you this today, but we thought we'll keep it simple for now. But you can do each and everything, and it's far more efficient to use Python. I'll even say far more efficient than R to use Python, especially because of support and for you to do this. But this is basically an introductory workshop, so that's what you're going to get. So I choose this, I click OK, and it'll create that variable for me, right? So that's all this is. So for now, it's all zeros. Any other questions? All right. So now what I want is a map that shows me the distribution of the Democratic vote across different counties in the US. So if I right click on this layer, choose Properties, and I go to the tab called Symbology. Okay? This tab is your friend. And this tab will help you create all the nice pretty things that you ever wanted. So if you click, for instance, there are two kinds of symbologies which is most useful for our purposes. I want you to click on categories or quantities. So categories are what you would use if you had, a variable with just a few cases. Do you guys see that or not see that? You guys see that? Okay. So if you have categories, then you will create something very simple. So for instance, I told you there was this particular variable called symbol cod, C-O-D. So if you don't have to do this, but just follow. So if I choose that particular variable, I click Add Values. It shows me all the different values along with the count of those values for over here. I can change each of these labels if I knew what 1 stood for, what 2 stood for, and so on and so forth. And if I click Apply, I want you to see how it turns out. So like that. Right? At a click of a button, you can get all the maps that you ever wanted. So go back, but this only works for categorical variables, right? Categorical variables are not something that you might or might not want, but what we want are actually vote shares for the Democratic Party. So if you go to quantities, you go under graduated colors. Under value, you pick up and you will see that the variable that I created earlier, per_dem, is right there. What it'll do is it will create automatically a set of ranges based on the distribution of this variable in the data, right? It uses a natural breaks classification, which is over here, which basically uses 5 breaks. If you don't like it, you can change the number of breaks. You can even click classify and look at the distribution of the percentage of Democratic vote and change the categories lengths as you please, such that the mass, between 2 categories are fairly consistent. So, but ArcGIS will do it at a first shot for you, right? And once you choose this, if you click on color ramp, you can choose different shades of color, right from grayscale to anything that the rainbow will give you. Once you have this entire list, you click apply, click OK, and there you have your map. So essentially what this does is that it shows you a nice pretty map of US counties with the Democratic vote share like that, right? Now what remains to be done is actually get this map in a nice manner. Remember, we are creating a thematic map. So in order to create a thematic map, we need a title, we need a legend, we need scale, and we need a north arrow. And other text if you want to put it, right? So in order to do all that, you want to do one thing. So if you go here under, remember I told you at the very bottom there were 2 tabs. So one is the data view, which is where we are when we edit the different maps. And then we have this other view, which is called the layout view, right? If you click on layout view, see what happens. You get a nice map with a border, which shows you the exact same map that you had here, right? Right there. And the map that is shown in your layout view really depends on what is the extent in your current view. So for instance, if I zoom in, and let us say I don't want to actually see Democratic vote share through the entire country, I only want to see the state we all love to hate, Florida, right? So you basically zoom in on Florida, like that. So you get Florida right there in your Arc map. And now if you switch to the data view, see what happens. You will basically get exactly what Florida gives you, right? So again, if you go back to the map, this is your entire map over here. If you don't want the entire map and you only want to zoom in to one particular area of the map for printing purposes or for your presentation purposes, you can zoom into that area, click to the layout view, and it'll only take whatever was shown in the previous window. So now that you have this, in the layout view, you can do a whole bunch of things. There is, if you go to the top here and you go to the insert menu, you can insert, for instance, a title, right? So you click title, it'll ask you for, what title do you want to give? So we can say PE 2008 Democratic vote share within brackets Florida, for instance. Right? Click OK. And it'll create this right at the top. You can move it here if it's better for you, right? Then you go to the insert menu and you click legend. It'll come up with a wizard which will let you pick a legend. For now, you can change your legend later through whatever you want. We can give the legend a title. Right now, let it just be legend. You can control its color, its size, its font, and so on and so forth. You can give the legend a border, you can give it a background, you can give it a shadow, and you can control its size, and it can summarize everything for you and say okay, and that is your legend right there. And if you don't like all these decimal points of 27 point whatever, you can change that also, right? So this is your legend. Then you want a scale. So how do you want to scale? You go to insert and you go to scale bar, right? If you go to scale bar, let you pick a scale, pick any scale you want, click OK. You should get a scale down there, which you can put it in here. Right now the scale is in decimal degrees, but obviously decimal degrees does not make a lot of sense for us, so you can change it to miles, for instance, right? And lastly, if you go back to the insert menu, they have insert north arrow. So you insert a north arrow, pick anyone you like from the list, click OK, you'll have a north arrow, move the north arrow, say, to the somewhere along the right there, right? And once you have this map, and remember you can add text. So if you go to the insert menu, they also have a text box that you can insert and insert any static text. They also have dynamic text. So things like date, time, author, where the file is stored, which is the coordinate system used, so on and so forth. All that other information that you typically want to put in a professional looking map, you can do that, right? Once you've done all of that, from your layout view, if you click on File and go to Export Map, you can now export the map in a whole bunch of formats. So depending on your favorite, whether it's a PDF or if you're going to dump it into a LaTeX document, if you want to use EPS or PNG, or if you want it back into some Photoshop, you can use TIFF, though you wouldn't want to Photoshop your maps, but yeah. So you never know. So this is essentially a way to, give you a way to create a nice looking map based on an attribute. We've used democratic vote share as an example, and create a publishable looking map in a matter of like 10 minutes, right? What Python will let you do is to create hundreds of such maps in a matter of 30 seconds. Once you write the code, obviously, right? One more thing I want to tell you is one thing is when you go to File, you click on Save As. The MXD file is a typical ArcGIS map file, right? So this entire thing can be stored as an MXD. It's called an ArcMap document. But I would typically store it as a... Where did it go? I'm sorry, my bad. You should be able to store this as a template. I'm not sure. I'm blanking out right now. No. Nope. Yeah. So I'll update that on the slides and make sure you know how to do that. So once you've figured out in your map where you want the legend, where you want the scale, where you want the north arrow, where you want the title, you want that to be the same for all your maps. And the best way to do that is to save this entire layout as a template. And once you do that, you can apply the template to any map that you create. And things will become much simpler, right? And one last thing before I go back to the slides is if you go back to the data view, and if you come back here to the main map, let's say you don't want just Florida, you want the entire thing. And if you look at the layout map now, you don't like where the map is positioned, right? You don't like its, let's say, its orientation. The question is whether you can tilt it, and the answer is yes. So if you go back here, you go to Customize, go to Toolbars, and you go to Data Frame Tools, right? And once you go to Data Frame Tools, a small toolbar will open here. You click on that, choose 90 degrees. Rotation, pop. And once you do that, go back here and it's all rotated, right? Obviously your legend and your other stuff is not nicely aligned right now, but you get the point, right? So whatever you see here is what you will find here. As simple as that. Any questions? Okay. Then we go back here. Yep. Okay. So this is your best place to get resources when you want to use ArcGIS. I mean, if there is one thing you will take back today, right? Even if you forget everything I said in the past 2 hours, if there is one thing you want to take back today, it is this. Find out where NYU Data Services is. It's in the library on the 5th floor. They're very, very helpful people. They will help you whether you have problems with software, problems finding data, or anything whatsoever, this is a really good place to go and get help. I learned GIS on my own, and this is where I got all my resources from, right? And in fact, some of the screenshots that I used in today's presentation were also from there. And this is what Neil was asking about earlier, is whether there exists other GIS software other than ArcGIS. And the answer is yes. There are a whole bunch of software that you can use. All of the ones listed on this slide are all paid software, and this is all a whole bunch of free software. So if you do not wish to use ArcMap, because you are an anti-capitalist or something, then feel free to use one of the free maps that you want, right? And lastly, one of the biggest problems when you work with GIS or ArcGIS is data. Where do you go for good geospatial data? And this is just a very short, simple list of places where you can get data. So all the maps that you see about the US especially has got incredible geo maps in a very nice accessible format that you can download and use. But other countries, obviously difficult, and these are some of the websites that will help you. I'll make sure the slide is on when I put up the slides for you to see, and you can go and check some of these out. But if there is a particular country, a particular city, a particular area, zone, event map that you are not able to find, and you don't know where to find it, these guys, right? These guys are there to help you find it. It's your tax money. He's not buying it. So, all right. So one last thing before we call it a day is one issue of copyright with respect to these slides. All the pictures that you see, all the text that you saw, and all the speech that I gave, none of it is copyrighted. It's not mine. This is all based on notes that I wrote down when I learned the software. It's taken from a various bunch of sources, and so other people might own the copyright. So, please use appropriately. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
And maybe one thing, the guys from the data lab, they can also give you a free 1-year copy of the ArcGIS software to put on your own laptop. Yeah, some sort of a trial version that I think contains everything, but you can only use it for 1 year.
No, it's not a trial version.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's a full version, which is what I use. It's incredibly simple. Go get a CD. It has a license number. Go register on the website, and you'll get it. But make sure you have a powerful enough laptop. And Macs are, not supported. So, yeah. All right.
Pointed hours, I think.
Sorry?
Are we done?
Yeah, done.
Okay. So 50 pointed hours, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
So I think we're taking a break through the break, and the
Oh.
next lab session is whatever the next lab session is.
Great.